revolution that we're dealing with today. Let's bring on the president of Americans for Limited Government. I think we got him now. Rick Manning is with us on the Ringside Hotline. And Rick, are you there? Good morning.
I am here. How are you doing, Jeff?
All right. Good to have you on the program. So a recent news release sent out by Americans for Limited Government says the cultural revolution of today will not stop at elections. They want your minds. And that's pretty scary thought, isn't it?
It really is, but it's absolutely true. We've seen it through the college system and through our school system for years, and now they essentially are saying it's not enough that we control all the power centers. What they want is for you to agree. They want you to kneel. And to kneel before them, not kneel before God, kneel before them. And that is what their objective is. They want a subservient class of Americans. They want to fundamentally transform America to something that is unrecognizable to anything that our forefathers certainly would have thought we would have been.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think we would have realized we would have been in this situation just a few months ago. My goodness, things are happening at such a quick pace. And unfortunately, a lot of the people that are behind these protests and these movements for so-called reform are Marxist, Rick. Those are not people that are limited government advocates.
You know, the irony is, I had the opportunity and the blessing to be a lobbyist for National Rifle Association many years ago. And police reform was one of the things that we would talk about because of various abuses of gun owners that occurred in places like New Jersey. And so we were always talking about that kind of stuff, but it wasn't very popular back then because they liked the police abusing people who were exercising their liberties. But today, we're in a different circumstance, and these people actually believe that they should be that police should be defunded, that we should have an anarchical society. And Jeff, the reason is very simple: an anarchical society, a society without governance of laws, is a society without laws. And if you want to break the society, strip away the laws, strip away the civilization, and then you can bring somebody in who will then solve the problem. But the way they'll solve it is by eliminating all your freedom.
Rick Manning with us, President of Americans for Limited Government, and that's a key word there, freedom. And some of these protesters don't believe in freedom. They don't believe in liberty. They believe in forcing you to adhere to what they want. And it's pretty scary. Let's just look at CHOP. That's sort of a scary, I guess, insight into what our country would look like if some of these folks took over. It'd be a countrywide CHOP. That's like hell.
Well, you know, it's the warlords of Somalia is what it is. It's a series of, you know, basically you go into a Mad Max movie and you take the absolute worst possible outcomes and you multiply it by 10, and that's what you end up with. So it's a series of warlords. It's whoever has the gun controls the system. You know, Mao said this. You know, power comes from the end of a gun, and in a godless society, that's true. And so there is, in fact, a course. You know, individuals will coerce, and the rest of the people will follow.
Rick, I wanted to check in with you about the latest release that you sent out concerning why hasn't the federal government blocked Chinese military-controlled companies from U.S. capital markets. If you could delve into that more with some with some of these points with our viewers and listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. The Pentagon, about 7 days ago, came out with a list of 20 Chinese companies that were effectively controlled by the Communist Party in China, the People's Liberation Army. And one of the duties of a company that's controlled by the People's Liberation Army is that they spy on the people who they are doing business with. And so we have 20 major companies from China that are essentially spying activities that are spread throughout the United States and are part of our capital markets. We're providing the funding for these companies through our capital markets, and the federal government needs to just say no. The Pentagon came up with a list, and the SEC needs to delist them. The Department of Labor needs to tell the pension funds, private pension funds, that they are not allowed to invest in these companies and put Americans' pensions at risk by putting them into companies that are not transparent and are actually doing harm to the United States or intend to do harm to the United States. So that is those are some simple things that can happen where we essentially take U.S. dollars and strip them away from companies that are Chinese assets. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make any sense for the U.S. free system to fund companies that are determined to take down our free system. And so the U.S. government has some things they should do. And, today would be a great day to do it because today's the day when China is finishing its crackdown on Hong Kong and is instituting laws which effectively make Hong Kong no longer quasi-independent but makes it a full vassal state to China.
And, of course, Hong Kong has a history of freedom, and Hong Kong has prospered because of their autonomy, and now that is being stamped out by these brutal dictators. And what's interesting, Rick, is that the Democrats never want to talk about China. They seem to always want to be focused on Russia. And when you look at the geopolitical situation, by far our biggest threat is China, not Russia. Yet, if Biden is elected president, it's going to be business as usual for Communist China. It's going to be back to the bad old trade deals with Communist China. We've had a president now who's the only president in memory who's ever stood up to Communist China. Your thoughts?
Well, that's absolutely true. And what we have is we have a focus on trying to focus on Russia for reasons unknown. But here's the thing. Russia is Mexico with nukes. Okay, China is a legitimate threat in the world. They have taken advantage of the trading system that was created by the globalists around the years in the 1990s and 2000s, and created a system that China basically cheated at for 20 years, stealing our jobs, stealing everything from our country, and basically hollowing out our industrial base. And what's happening now is President Trump's fighting back. And some of those people who've set up this system don't like it, and that's why they're attacking President Trump. And that's why we have to stand behind President Trump, because we have to win against China. We have our domestic problems, and I don't know for certain, but I'm hearing words that China may have some role in those domestic problems we have. But we have a responsibility as Americans to stand up to China and make certain that American jobs are brought back here to America, and we make the stuff that we buy.
Rick, I'm a suspicious person by nature. I think this Chinese virus is, of course, the culpability is squarely on their shoulders. I don't trust what they're saying about it. I don't trust what they did about it. I don't trust that this wasn't done on purpose. Who knows? But I do know at the very least they lied. At the very least they weren't playing straight with the American people. And I know they would love to see Donald Trump lose. Seeing the economy suffer is something that the Chinese probably would be very happy with, because they feel that might help Joe Biden win. And they're for Joe Biden. They want to go back to dealing with Beijing Biden because, of course, look at the deals that Hunter got with China.
Yep.
And by the way, Rick, when are we ever going to prosecute Hunter Biden?
Well, I don't expect that Hunter Biden will ever get prosecuted, except for if it's a petty drug charge. But what I do expect to have happen is if Joe Biden is elected president, Lunch Bucket Joe, he's the first guy to send the jobs to China and tell the people with a lunch bucket to, learn to code. So that's Joe Biden. So if people want that, vote for that. But the fact of the matter is we do have a system that was thriving beyond anybody's belief. China unleashed a virus. Whether or not they intended to unleash it, they did unleash it. They lied to the world. As a result, that virus was spread outside of China. While they shut the travel down inside of China, but they let the travel from China go out around the world. And we ended up with a massive problem. And, China lied and hundreds of thousands of people died. That's just true.
That is very true. And that's got to be our focus, I think, between now and the election. Do we want a country that's going to be completely dominating the United States like China, or do we want to stand up to China and put America first and I think that's one of the major differences between Beijing Biden and, of course, Donald Trump. And I'm hoping the American people get it, Rick, and I'm hoping the American people are going to respond with reelecting the president. The stakes are high. Rick, thank you for the great work you're doing. We look forward to having you back on the program soon. That's Rick Manning of Americans for Limited Government. Jeff Crouere here. Quick time out. We'll be right back.
Brett Favre, legendary quarterback.